Would you say a lot of the things that you deal with helping people get out of debt? Because it's one thing to tell them the statistics, it's one thing to speak logic, but just like we said at the top of the call, a lot of people's beliefs, limiting beliefs, most likely, are based off of what they've experienced in their childhood. I know that's something that I see on your profile that you mentioned it. What have you discovered has been a triggering point for a lot of people, or if you've discovered a triggering point for a lot of people that stems from their childhood with how they treat money in adulthood?
So there's studies out there that say that the overwhelming majority of how you feel about and how you deal with money is formed before you're 13. So even if you don't think that there are things that you saw that impacted your money journey, not only did it impact it, in many cases, it like formed it fully and you can't even change it, right? So if you take an example of somebody who grew up and, you know, maybe they weren't even poor. Maybe, for example, one of their parents was really conservative with money and another one of their parents liked to spend. And maybe they took that child to the mall and they would treat them to some things at the mall. And they would say, don't tell your mom or don't tell your dad. That has a major impact as to how that person deals with money with their future spouse, right? Mm-hmm. I grew up in a household where my dad hid financial purchases from my mom, or my mom hid things from my dad. And now I'm trying to establish a relationship with another person with open communication. And what I saw was that there are some things that you can hold back from these conversations. That may be a small thing. Let's also look at somebody who grew up in an environment, which is the way that many of us grew up in the church environment, where they may feel like having money makes you less moral, right? Imagine that person trying to deal with earning more money than anybody around them has ever made. And they grew up to feel that you were somehow less godly if you were earning more money. Those are things that impact how that person saves, right? So you look at a person who may make $400,000, but they don't have a pot to piss in if you took their job away from them, and you start to figure out why. And you're like, oh my goodness, this guy is giving away all of his money. And it may not be because he really wants to support charity XYZ. There may be some guilt as to having all that money in the first place. So it manifests all over the place. You have other people who have been in rooms where maybe they had a learning disability and they didn't like raising their hand in class, right? That same person may be very likely to sit with the CPA, and the CPA may be telling them something about, hey, you need to do this, this, and this. Otherwise, you're going to owe a $30,000 tax bill. And that person may be afraid to ask why, or I don't understand what you're talking about, or what is this thing that you're telling me to do? So they just don't do it at all. Now they have a $30,000 tax bill. So all of those early childhood things can pop up. And if you don't have some awareness of them, it's not that you can like change who you are, but you can plan around your inclinations. And we do a lot of that at our firm.
Yeah, I know, because, you know, coming from multiple levels of the customer services industries, different things. I went from being an installer to a general lines agent to a insurance adjuster, insurance appraiser, to having, external and internal customers, expert witness work. A lot of things that I've done where I had to deal with a lot of people. Sometimes it can feel tempting to hear an educate like a hesitation in someone, because we know what that feels like. Like when you're good at working with people, if somebody, even if they don't say it, if they have another question, it's like they're like, well, okay, all right. It's very tempting, especially when you're trying to get off the phone, especially when you're trying to get to that next customer that to trigger that next commission. It's very tempting to let that slide. How do you ask that question or pull that out from that person that was, as a child, scared to raise their hand?
Man, a lot of it for me is I've been on the wrong side of somebody who didn't ask that question. So I talked about people who I grew up around. A person who's very close to me, died 5 or 6 years ago from a recurring illness. And a big part of how that disease progressed was because they did not get screened as regularly as they should have. And it was because they just didn't understand the directions that their doctor gave them in one of the follow-up visits. And they have always been afraid of physicians. I mean, that's literally, it boiled down to that. Like, if you had gone and gotten this checked 3 months ago, like you should have, we may still be here having this conversation, and instead that person has passed. So I hate being in rooms where I can see that somebody doesn't get what I'm saying. So I do a lot of public speaking engagements, and I scan the room, and I am not paying attention to the person in the room who thinks that they knew everything that I was going to say before I start talking. That's one of the things about giving presentations when you're a financial advisor. There's always another financial advisor in the room, or there's always another tax professional in the room, or there's always somebody who used to be a financial advisor in the room. So they're barely listening to what you say. And the first thing that they're trying to do is just combat what you say. I'm not paying attention to that person. I'm paying attention to the person where, as I'm speaking and trying to explain how something works financially, they have a look of confusion on their face. And I'm going to keep giving different examples until I see that look disappear. And then we move forward, because I want to make sure, no, we don't move forward until you get it. I already get it. I put the presentation together. So it's like, we're not going to move forward until you get it.
Oh, yeah. And that is a very, very delicate balance when you're doing the one-to-many presentation, right? Because not only do you want to make sure everybody gets it, like you said, you usually have that person in the crowd. And I tell people, I say, it's always going to be, I call them jokingly, I call them a hater, right? I say, hey, it's always going to be at least one hater, right? Now, I've had the pleasure of converting haters in front of that crowd, and that does feel good. But at the same time, just like dealing with which you're a little bit better than me. You ignore the haters. Seem like I like to chastise them in front of everybody, right? But let's say I ignore the hater. Sometimes you get that feeling of, all right, I'm trying to educate this person and get that confused look off their face. But at the same time, I got this venue. I know my presentation is 1 hour. I know I want to get as much information in as possible, but I also don't want to answer so many questions that nobody sets an appointment with me, right? How do you deal with that? Is it one of those things where if nobody left with a confused look on their face and you didn't get one appointment, will you be like, all right, I did my thing? Or will you be like, all right, let me switch this up a little bit?